Good morning, everyone. It's currently 6 p.m. I'm at my elementary school. As you guys can see, it's a beautiful elementary school. Our classrooms were here. I actually went to my first grade class right there. We ate at the cafeteria right there. So this is a beautiful area. I love this area, but I chose to go here because actually my journey with social media started here. So when I was very little, my dad got me a computer because he was a techie, he was into tech. And for a while, his family had the desire of going into tech and whatever. And unfortunately, tech didn't come around until the 1980s, 1990s. So my dad wanted to get me interested into tech early on, so he actually bought me a computer. So my first computer, if I remember correctly, was a Windows computer. And I used it once in a while. Sometimes I'd go on YouTube, but my parents, they restricted my time that I could actually spend on my computer. And it wasn't until I was in 5th grade when my parents bought me an iPod for my birthday. So naturally, I wanted to be like all the students in my class. And I wanted to download Instagram, which was a hot thing back then, so I did. I downloaded Instagram, and that was my main social media platform. Back then, Instagram wasn't the rainbow icon it was the brown camera icon. There were no Instagram Reels, there was just an Instagram feed with pictures, videos, etc. I don't even think the videos were long back then. I think they were very short on Instagram. Then middle school came around, and we talked more and more about social media. Grades don't matter, nothing else matters. We just all want to fit in with our classmates, so that's what we did. And then high school came along, and during high school, I live in the Bay Area, so we all took high school really seriously. All of a sudden, everyone started to pay attention a lot to their grades, and I wanted to join in. I always had dreams of going into Stanford, Harvard, UC Berkeley, UCLA, or any Ivy League school. Those were my dreams. So I really wanted to get good grades to get into these schools. And I remember my first semester of high school, and that was a complete disaster. I was always busy. I had all of this stuff going on. I had football, karate, this, that, whatever. But I still had a lot of free time to spend studying for school or doing productive things. But instead of doing that, I just spent time on social media or video games. In the moment it's fun, but looking back at it, I always ask myself, what would have high school been like if I wouldn't have been addicted to social media? So after I graduated from high school, I got into universities, but none of them were the top universities or universities I wanted to go to. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to community college for 1 year, but I actually have to delete all social media. I have to lock in, I have to focus, prioritize all my energy on school, and try my best at getting into either UC Berkeley, UCLA, or USC. So that's exactly what I did. I deleted Instagram. I didn't delete YouTube, but I set a lot of restrictions. I tried using some extensions too. And I realized all of a sudden I had all of this free time. Because back then I didn't keep track of time, and I was like, holy crap, I don't have much time, I gotta hurry, this, that, etc. But I wasn't realizing that most of my time I spent on social media. So all of a sudden I had all of this free time, and I was like, wow, damn, where did it come from? So I started to spend more time on school. I started to get great grades. I remember my first quarter at community college, although community college is much easier, I'm not gonna say anything about that, but I took 6 classes in 1 quarter, and then I took a 7th class, and that was a week after my 6th class ended, and that lasted for about 3 weeks in another community college. So in total, I took 7 classes in about 4 months, or 3-4 months, somewhere in between there. And I got all A's, and I was like, holy crap, okay. So I was spending my time incorrectly, and now I can explore all of these new opportunities. And not only that, but I actually learned coding. I remember I always had a desire to learn to code since I was in high school. And I did create a few mobile apps when I was in high school, but nothing too big. And I wanted to get into web development. I was really interested into it. And I kept trying to learn it when I was in high school, but I never got around to actually creating any web app that I thought would be meaningful to many people. So I actually learned web app development my first quarter of community college, and all of a sudden I created my first web app during the winter of that year when I started community college. So I took 7 classes, I created this web app, and I tried learning a little more about marketing, and I was like, holy crap, okay. maybe I was just wired incorrectly back then. And I ended up transferring to UCLA, and at UCLA, it was the same story. But after I graduated UCLA, so I graduated UCLA 2 months ago, and I started a TikTok account. And I wanted to run a small experiment, right? So I started to scroll a little bit because I wanted to get some inspiration for potential content, what's going viral, this, that, etc. So I started doing that on TikTok, and I realized the first few weeks after I started doing that, I felt much more fatigued than before. And by the way, mind you, before I was also very busy. But what I did before was I went to the gym, I stick to the diet, I coded, I prioritized school. But now I spent basically all of my time on social media. I started studying social media content. I then went on to execute on social media content. So I started to get this fatigue all of a sudden. Not only just this fatigue, my eyes started to hurt and I just had less desire to do things. And a week later I actually ran another experiment where I wouldn't consume any content. I would just post content. I already had a sense of what was doing well and what was not doing well. And all of a sudden I had much more energy, my eyes would hurt less, and I felt more fulfilled. Let me say this. Looking back at it, I think clearer. I have more desires to do more things. I have more ideas. I love getting outside more. I get outside more. I try new things out. I have more energy when I don't use social media. And I feel like I'm at my best when I don't use social media. Unfortunately, lately I had to slightly get into social media back again to try to learn more about the trends. But in the future, my goal is to completely eliminate social media again from my life. And I feel like now it's way easier for me to control myself when it comes to social media and completely delete things, because I already know from the past that I love myself, I love my life much more when I'm not on social media than when I am on social media. Maybe it just takes getting used to, which most people are probably used to having social media in their lives, and they're used to that being their life for so long that they're scared to take the big leap and just remove everything and live life in the present and go outside and try new things that are not social media related. Let me say this, if you analyze a video, and I've been creating videos for the past few months already, so I feel like I kind of understand the trends already, especially with short form content. Long form content I'm not as good, but when it comes to short form content, I feel like I understand it much better. So I had a few TikToks that got about a couple 100,000 views, and what I've realized from posting on TikTok is that most viral TikToks, or at least in my case and what I've realized from many other people, most viral TikToks that went viral did so because they evoked an emotion. They evoked an emotion from the user watching the TikTok, whether it's a happy emotion, sad emotion, mixed emotions, whatever. And I feel like that's what these social media companies want to do too. They want to evoke these emotions, and over time you're just so used to going on social media, and it's like your friendly spot, it's like your nice spot, that you keep going back to it even when you're tired, when you're lonely, whatever. It's like your go-to spot. And it's your go-to spot because you experience all these different emotions when you're just scrolling through social media. The problem with that is it may feel good in the moment, right? You may feel, oh wow, I'm experiencing all these other emotions, like I was sad before but now I see this happy clip so I'm happier, this, that, etc. It may feel great in the moment, but fast forward an hour after you experience that emotion, you go back to that sad emotion. And in some cases, it may actually be a deeper sadness than it was before. And not only that, but now you added more fatigue to your system. So now you feel more fatigued, and it's just this ongoing cycle. And then you feel less accomplished, you're more anxious about that, so now you have anxiety stacked on you. And it took me a while to realize it. Intuitively, you don't realize it initially. There's this consistent trend of, oh wow, I'm feeling sad. I go on social media, I feel slightly happier, and then I feel sad again. Oh, and then I feel anxious because I'm lacking behind on these things. And it's this ongoing cycle. But after you delete social media, you may experience that sadness, right? So you experience that sadness moment, but then you learn to cope with your emotions much better. So for example, I started going to the gym when I'd feel sad, when I'd feel lonely, and it made me feel much better. Or I'd go on walks or I'd swim, and all of a sudden I had these coping mechanisms which were actually healthy. So that's a win on all books. And not only that, but if you find stuff you like doing, like coding, singing, etc., all of a sudden you feel much more fulfilled, and you feel much happier, and all of a sudden you have all these great things come into your life, right? You become more desirable to your other sex, you start having all these amazing opportunities for you, this, that, and then your amazing life just comes into reality. So I realized that the only way for this to happen for you is if you delete all social media from your life. And initially it may be hard, it was hard for me, But I realized that later on, my life was much better when I did that. I basically felt like a kid again, like the world is my oyster, which it is. The world is my oyster. It can be your oyster too if you delete social media.